just before we chatted, just before we started this. This recording will go onto the website. So if you put your contact details into the chat, then obviously you've got to be happy that those are going to be shared. We're all in business, so I'm kind of assuming that's probably not a bad thing. So if anyone wants to put them deliberately in the chat box, and then please feel free. We are going to promptly finish at 10 o'clock. The main reason being Sue's bags are packed. They're nearly in the car and she's off to Wales. So we don't want to delay her any further because she should actually be on holiday. So she's very kindly sort of delayed her holiday so she can do this call. So we're very grateful for that.
Oh, Claire's frozen there.
Oh no.
No, you're okay.
Am I back?
I can hear you.
Great. And any non-members who have joined this, Sue will catch up with you when she's back next week. So any guys there that aren't members yet, so hopefully you will be after this. Okay, should we kick off then, Steve? I'm going to hand straight over to you, and you can get us rolling.
Thank you, Claire. I'm going to share my screen, everybody. So good morning, everybody. My name's Steve Jebson. We've got people having meetings, getting confusing me now. Good morning, I'm Steve Jebson. I'm a business doctor, and I try and help people grow their business. I'm working a lot at the moment with people trying to get their head around how COVID-19 is impacting them. But I think we need to look forward with our glass half full, not half empty, because the one thing that we've learned through all recessions is there are opportunities. And hopefully today I'll provide a bit of a framework, a bit of a conversation, a bit of a discussion around how to think about those within your business. I'm happy to take questions as we go along. If you put them in the chat box, I'm sure Sue will help pull them out. But equally, we'll have time for conversation at the end. There's going to be a couple of questions as we go along. We're going to attempt to do a couple of polls for the first time with HHBA. Nothing too onerous. We're not collecting the information. It's just really to get a sense of how everybody's feeling. And with that, if everybody's okay, I'm going to crack on. So what am I trying to achieve today? Well, look, I really do want to help you think about the options and the future for your business. I do have a bit of a framework I'm going to share. Feel free to take photos of the screen. I'm also happy to share this via PDF by Sue next week when she comes back from holiday. But one thing I want to stress, it's about being strategic. Now more than ever, you need to think about your business and not just do. I want to talk about what the new world might be, and I'm a bit bored of that word, but nonetheless, there is change and we need to adapt to it. And clearly it's the opportunity for everybody within the HHBA community to talk to each other, because clearly there are lots of people on this call who can help. I love the quote, which is the best way to predict the future is to create it. And actually all of us have the opportunity to create our future for our businesses to achieve the vision and aspirations that we have. So I'm going to start with the first question, which is, it's been a bit of a time, hasn't it? So how are we all feeling? I guess if you could launch a poll, so it's a scale of 1 to 7, choose one. Your number 1 is, I'm quite worried. I'm not really sure about how my future growth potential is, through to number 7. I really feel optimistic that my business can grow amazingly well. So if you give 30 seconds for you just to find into that, we can get a sense of how everybody's feeling. I've done this poll quite a few times throughout the last 3 months or so with all sorts of audiences, and it's always interesting to compare level of optimism and pessimism. But there equally was a time at the beginning where everybody was very, very unsure for obvious reasons. So it'd be interesting to see how everybody's feeling right now. Got 4 more to go, Sue. I think if we just give another 5 seconds and then we'll just go from there. Cool. You just share the results, Sue. That'd be great. So there we go. The most popular was number 6, feeling quite optimistic. Quite an optimistic set. A few people down on a bit worried. One thing COVID-19 has taught us is that the impact is really business and sector specific. Depending on what kind of business you're in, is really the changes and the challenges that that is bringing upon you. In previous polls, it's generally been slightly less optimistic than this one, so it's good that within this area we feel that there are opportunities ahead. So without further ado, the most important question actually is, how are your team feeling? Because genuinely, I'm a great believer that business is about people, and not just business change, but people have got real change at home. So again, it's just a bit of a multiple choice. If you could try and choose a couple of these choices, Sue will launch it. If you could just have a quick look and think about what's the most true for your business about how your team are feeling. If you could launch the poll, Sue, it's on its way. Can be a bit delayed in Zoom, so especially when we've got other things going on in chat box. There we go.
Steve, some of us genuinely work on our own. We haven't got a team. We've got a virtual team in terms of suppliers and clients and supporters and so on, but we haven't got.
So I guess
staff.
Okay, Richard. So I guess the thing a bit about how you feeling then in terms of for your business. Are you feeling those things? I guess it's the people with 1 and 2 and several. So yeah, just for yourself. If there's just you, I'm a one-man band, and there's a few in those I recognise.
One-man band? Don't you mean niche business?
No, I like to think of myself as not niche actually. But yeah, I know what you mean. Self-starting, Richard.
I can't answer the poll. Is that because I'm a host?
Don't know, Sue, Claire. I'll guess it must be. I'll just give another 5 seconds for a bit of a view to come out. We'll go up to a minute. We've got 11 votes coming through, so there's still some people to fire some. I'm told, Claire, yes, it is. Cool. Well, it's interesting. There's quite a bit about everybody missing each other, and actually that teams generally feel like they've been more productive. And certainly when I've done this previously, the more productive bit has come out quite a lot, that people have got used to working in really focused periods at home or in their little spaces. And actually how you then grab that and use that as part of your business strategy and plans for the future is going to be really, really interesting. So thank you for that, everybody. So where are we now? What do we know? We're still a way away from a vaccine. I know that Russia announced yesterday they got one that was working. We are still being released from lockdown in phases. We've just been told that face masks are compulsory in closed environments, in retail shops, etc., from the 24th. But actually what's happening is everything's very industry specific. It's really difficult to have one view that fits all. Around 10.4 million people were furloughed at peak, and we're now starting to see businesses taking really tough, difficult decisions and job losses, and that's impacting confidence. And that's certainly one thing that I'm talking to most of my clients is they're starting to feel nervous. They're starting to get a little bit of nerves in the bottom of their stomach. And so the general consensus is we are heading towards the worst recession in 80 years. But then again, change is a constant within business. It's the only thing that is constant. And I guess my final point is at some point we're going to have to pay this back. And whether that's today, next 12 months, next 5 years, next 50 years, it's a big bill. It's equivalent to that of a war. And at some point, the government will have to pay that back. But if we go back to 2007, 2008, there were businesses that really thrived, right? They took on the challenges and they took on the opportunities. But what did they do? And this is from a really big academic study. So the first thing is they actually acted to fix stuff before it was broken. They didn't wait for stuff to change. They got on with it. And if there's one thing you'll come out of today, it's think strategically, but act immediately. They looked at resilience and they worked on what were the emerging trends and they tried to be a disruptor. And there's lots of examples in this. It could be Groupon or Uber, and all these things come through as tech. But actually what came out of 2007 and 2008 was tech. Was going to be a real disruptor. And I think we're in a similar place. They took the active decision to adapt, to explore that part of disruption, but they thought strategically about how they were going to grow, and then they stuck to it. And unfortunately, they streamlined the organization. But that isn't just people. That is about how they do things. It's looking at every process, see how can we do this more efficiently, more quickly. So I guess my challenge is you can take opportunities in tough markets, but you have to think about how you think through these 5 things for your business. Because we're not going to go back to business as usual, but then again, whenever was business as usual? I like to think of businesses, and I use a framework which I call the 6 R's. There was the 5 R's before everybody got closed, and I then had to include the R for restart. Generally, when I talk to clients, I'll try and take them through these 5 steps, which is reflect on what you want out of your business, and what the business means to you and what you want it to represent. Review things that are going to happen to you. You can't challenge, but they happen to you, the external stuff. Then think internally. Think about your business model. Think about where you add value to your customers. Think about simple questions like, well, what business am I in and what problem do I solve? Then think about your organization itself. What skills do you need? How do you adapt? And then apply, recover. And that's about a clear plan. Milestones, you know, very big believer that any plan without any goal without a plan is just a wish. And actually, again, you know, if you want to use a war or an analogy around army, it is a strategy to win a battle. So what is the battle? Define your battle. That's the reflect part. Define which battle you want to play, want to be in, and then plan to win. Now I'm going to take you through a few diagrams and other things on these 6 steps. I'm not going to focus too much on restart. Frankly, there are businesses that clearly are well into restart and those that are beginning to think about it or further along the line. But restart is and has been quite a short-term thing. It's a lot of questions that your staff have about what's going to happen to the business. How do I get childcare? Is it safe? How do I get there? That kind of stuff. And from the business owner's perspective, it's not really about doing stuff different immediately. It's about, well, how do I make my workplace safe? How long is it going to take me to get my revenues up? Do I have to think about my business in a different way? But actually, everybody I've worked with, it's been more about get open, get going, let's start. Only now are people starting to implement change. So I'm sure for many of you, you're much more experienced than I am at reopening businesses out of this restart. Here is just some of the things I talk to my clients about. And as I said, I don't necessarily intend to spend too much on restart today. What I do want to talk about is review. I use this quite a lot to get people's head around how they think about their business. And I ask 2 questions. How significant is the impact of COVID-19 for you, and how long is it going to take for your revenues to return? So on the x-axis, it's quite simply, how long is it going to take for your revenue to return to normal? And this is just an estimate, right? Let's just remember, forecasts in businesses are just guesses, whether they are, have lots of evidence behind them or whatever you want to say, it's an estimate. So just think about, how long do you think it's going to take for your business to recover? Is it going to be quick, or is it going to take a long time? And how big an impact has COVID had on your business? Is it been not too big, or has it been massive? With those 2 thoughts, if it's going to be quick for your revenue to return and impact is pretty small, you probably need to emerge. Just get on with it. And my example here would be a hairdresser or a barber. You know, they were locked down, and then told to open. Actually, their business model, relatively speaking, isn't that affected, apart from PPE, you know, and how they do social distancing and everything else to do with that. If it's going to take longer for your business to recover in terms of revenue, but there's not much impact, you're probably going to have to restructure. And that's where restaurants are right now, right? You know, either they've found a revenue source in takeaways and they'll have adapted a little bit, or actually they're looking at lower levels of revenue, taking time to recover, less density, and they have to restructure. And now a lot of that is around finance. A lot of that is how do you keep going whilst your revenue does take time to come back. But if you start to get your head around, am I emerging? Am I restructuring? It starts to set your mind as to how you play. The third one is adapt. So it's pretty quick for your revenue return, but there's lots of change. And the stuff I've put in there, it's like the small breweries adapting to do, the hand sanitizer. You know, there's lots of other examples. You know, I put in here previously, you could put in taxi companies have adapted in some ways to take more bookings, but it's about how you adapt your business, because your model isn't going to change too much. You're still going to sell beer, maybe some slight changes to how it's going to work. And then the final one is reinvent. Lots of change to your market and a long time to recover. And right now I'm talking to a couple of people who have got small takeaway, and one's a restaurant based around a commuter hub. And they just don't think that they're going to get the same level of footfall that they once had. So how do they reinvent their model? What do they do to change it? I was looking at a report for Canary Wharf last week. They normally have 120,000 people a day through Canary Wharf. They're at 7,000 right now. So if you've got a lease in a shop in Canary Wharf and you're looking at that level of decline, one, it's a long time before revenue returns. But we've already spoke about Zoom taking over, people being more productive at home. Is it ever likely to recover to that? So I use this as the first point of conversation with all my clients to try and get their head around where are they. you're not in one box, and you could be going between 1, 2, 3, and 4, but it just allows people to think about the two key dynamics. How long do I think it's going to take before my money returns, my revenue returns, and how big an impact has this been on me? And with that in mind, you can then move on to, well, how do I move forward? How do I bring my business to take advantage of the opportunities? Hopefully that was clear. So you really need to start with where you're heading. Start with the end in mind. And again, having had 12 weeks off, many businesses have really rethought this. Your business should work for you. It should deliver on your aspirations and your vision and your goals. So again, talking to most of my clients, their personal aspirations have changed. You know, whether it be length of time that they want to be in it, how much work they want to do, how many hours they want to work. They have spent time thinking about how they want to interact with their business. That's impacted their values. Your values are a framework upon which you manage your team, you work with your customers, and we've had probably the most significant social change as a shift for decades. And again, people are thinking about what's important to them. This will then probably have impacted your vision. Where are you going? What are you trying to do? And then ultimately, heart of your business will your purpose. What business are you really in? And do your customers still want the same? And this is the simple question, the example being the likes of Black & Decker. They don't sell drills, they actually sell holes. You know, the drill delivers the hole. What people are buying is a perfect hole. So it's that conversation about what is it that you really, really do? And purpose starts to differentiate you from your competition, and it's what drives you to be unique. And if anybody wants to talk about the purpose of their business, just give me a shout. I love this conversation. It's a really important part of a business's DNA, and actually it will be the reason that people are loyal to you, both your employees and your customers. So start with end in mind, think about where you're heading, think about what you're looking for, think about what's in it for you, but ultimately start working through your vision and your purpose. Hopefully that's pretty clear. The next slide is about thinking externally. You'll have seen there's PEST, STEPS, all sorts of different ones. The reality is you need to think about 5 axes. What is the social impact? And these are dynamics that impact you, that you have no influence over, but they do affect you. So social, you know, how do you lead a remote team? What does that mean for you? I think there's something emerging called the better society. People are volunteering more than they've ever done. And that will mean people will start to wonder, what is your social position in terms of how you help the community? Technology, well, we've accelerated the contactless economy, certainly the working from home technology and how that impacts on your organization, your market is going to be really, really important. And it is transformational, it's disruptive. And again, a lot of conversations with clients around that. Then there's politics. I don't know if you saw yesterday, the government's launched its Brexit campaign. We will leave transition period in January. It's called Check, Change and Go. Check what's going to do, what's changed, change it, and then go. It's going to be an interesting time. My concern is not just our preparedness for this change, it's Europe's preparedness for this change, because it's a two-way conversation. And there's likely to be increased regulation, even if that's just on simple health and safety, cleaning, all that sort of stuff. So again, what are the things of politics that are going to come and impact you? Then there's environmental. Green taxation, working with a funeral director who we're trying to work out how he becomes the greenest funeral director in Surrey. Because again, that's part of what's driving some of his consumers. And that's what's the important point here. What's important for your customers? What's important for your consumers? And then there's economic. There'll be some changes to how interest rate policy changes. Clearly, if you've taken out B-bills and C-bills and all the other things, that they're fixed. But we will have future taxation changes. We've just had VAT cut, and that's really helpful. But again, the bill is coming. This is just a very simple framework where you just talk about things that are going to impact your business, which you cannot change, and then you just put them into that really difficult, can't do it, really going to be impactful. And it's just a question of trying to identify the ones that are important to you, that you need to think about how your organization responds to. So once you've done what you're looking for and you've looked at what's impacting externally, you should think about your own business. and I'll put it into a number of buckets. So let's start with customers. So top 10 customers, how have their needs changed? Who's still open? Do you need to find some new ones? You know, what's interesting in this area is lots of people are thinking about new customers as well as focusing on their core customers. And actually, key relationships plays into this part. Many customers and suppliers have worked together to get through this. So who's helped you? Who do you want to support in the longer term? But focusing around your customers will help you understand your needs and opportunities. And I do a simple check with people. I ask them, can you describe 5 ways in which you think your customers have changed? And what are those 5 ways that you need to respond? And we talk about competition because, you know, we talked about disruption. There are new people entering markets. You know, I guess the hand sanitizer market 12 weeks ago didn't realize that all the brewers were going to enter it. You know, equally, lots of takeaways restaurants have gone into takeover. Previously, they weren't doing it. The other point is, what's the position of your key competitors? How stable, how safe, how secure are they? I am working with somebody who's looking to acquire their biggest competitor. And they think they're weak, underfunded, and actually that brings them a key opportunity. I'll come back to team in a minute. Talk about supply chain. It really is important to work out which of your suppliers are in it for the long term. And we've spoke a little bit about how Brexit's going to impact them. If you have stuff coming out of Europe through your suppliers, you really should be asking them what's their Brexit plan. We're going to come back into how much stock they're going to carry. That'll go into cash flow, etc. Some are still not open. Some have decided not to open. I know one of my colleagues is working with a company in Brighton that have decided not to open, just want to settle their bills and close. But what are their future plans? And then the bit that you'll be seeing right now is your products and service mix and your margins and profits are probably not the same as they were before. Seems pretty obvious, but you're probably selling different things. Hopefully you're selling them not at cheaper prices. That'll be of your call. Right now, that's not something I'd be advising anybody to do, would be to cut prices. But have a look at your product and service mix. I did work with a furniture retailer who suddenly worked out that they weren't selling sofas, they were selling reclining chairs. And we remodeled all his business on the fact that he hadn't seen that. So again, really important, where do you make your money and what are you selling? Because it'll help you understand who your customers are. It'll probably help you understand how your competition wins or loses against you. And then finally, you think about your team. What skills do you need in the future? And what is your organization going to look like? What shape is it? We're seeing lots of restructuring going on, lots of what's going to happen out of furlough. It's clearly really dependent on what your revenue stream is going to be and where you think your profitability is going to be. It will come back to what is my cash flow projection. And for those in the cash flow business and the finance business, you know, cash flow has become a real cornerstone of every business. It was before, but many didn't really focus on it. But how is your team working? And for if you are going to have to make big team decisions, and let's unfortunately say make some people redundant, how do you go through that process where the people who stay with you see that you've done the right thing? It is inevitable that organizational structures will change, but you need the people who have stayed to be on fire and working really hard. And clearly, I come back to the bit about the better society. Customers are going to reward organizations that have done the right things through these processes. You don't have to look at the bad press around Virgin or whatever else it could be. And certainly they will come back to play very hard against you. So a number of steps here that you can work through and ask yourself some simple questions, which will allow you again to put in context, how is your business, where is it, and how is it feeling? So when you've done this, you've thought about where am I going, you've thought about what's impacting you externally, you've had a pretty good view of where you are internally as an internal view. It comes on to what I call gives. And this really is an audit of yourself. And you can do this over a coffee at any time. You don't actually need to have done the other bits. You probably know most of the other bits anyway. The process I go through is really just to bring clarity. But what am I good at? What am I great at? Where do I think my great core capabilities are? And has it changed? You know, has it changed? Lots of people have seen a core capability of being able to work on, you know, virtually that never existed before. So what is my core capability and has it changed? Excuse me. What do I need to improve? Really, when I do this with people, I get a very short list in great, and I get a very long list in improve normally. And actually, when pushed, most businesses are better at stuff than they realize. and the improvements are generally more minor than they think. But what do you need to improve? Next question, where am I vulnerable? Where do I feel that others are taking advantage or could take advantage, or where am I not prepared for some of the external changes that are going to be really impacting me? So what challenges are we seeing, and how are we going to respond? And then finally, what's my edge? So what makes the difference? Key questions, what problem do I solve for my customer? Why do they deal with me, not my competitor? Simple things you can ask yourself to try and work out what your edge is. And we generally, I try and refer to this as holding a mirror to your business. Look at your business in a mirror and ask yourself, how good do we look? What things would you want to change? What things am I really worried about? And what makes me different? And again, with those things in mind, you can move on to what is your value proposition and how do you position yourself. It's a simple model, and it has 3 key axes. Broadly, research shows you generally compete in 4 ways. You're either a cost-focused business. We're generally not going to see small businesses do that. There's a lot of the Aldis and all the other you can describe that focus around cost, but it's not just about selling cheaply. It can be about being amazingly efficient in a manufacturing form or in a service form. But on the whole, most small businesses don't play in the bottom left-hand corner. When I talk to my clients, it's really around differentiation and niche. And differentiation is, what do you do differently? And niche, who do you do it to, right, or for? And operating along that axis is where you'll find your point of difference. If you get caught in the middle, you'll be competing on low margins, competing on price. You'll be everything to everybody. And this is a real question around talking about who are your customers, because your differentiation is only relevant for a niche. So the first question is generally about, well, who are you really trying to target your business with? Where do you think you make money now or in the future? I was with a client yesterday, a big conversation around the what. I really need to change how I do my internet. Okay, good, get that. What do you want to do? Do you want to do this? But to who are you trying to target? Who is it you're trying to get to? Is that the right place to do it? So I generally, again, will always come back to the who question first, because that will then help drive the niche focus. We worked with a company who makes prefabricated offices. I wasn't doing particularly well. Great offices, always delivered on time, never any problems, but couldn't really find a market. Actually, the niche problem was they needed to work with hotels. So he's now one of the biggest suppliers to Premier Inn, because to the office guys, having a prefabbed office wasn't really that interesting. But to Premier Inn, being able to build a hotel really quickly, prefabricated, delivered on time, allows them to put a hotel up in 12 weeks. That's exactly the kind of niche. So again, exploiting a niche will help you think about how you really unlock what is your advantage. And in that instance, his differentiation was delivered on time, on spec, in full, at great value. So again, think about what problem you solve and think about who you solve it for. Because when you've done that, you'll be able to move forward and think about your business. So, gets to getting it done. It's where the rubber hits the road. And I generally try and get my teams and my people, my clients, to think about 4 steps. You need to lead your organization, and that we've talked about. Define your vision, define your values, set the goals. Okay. You need to engage your team, work with them, be honest and straight about the 6 R's. Talk to them about what they think are the impacts of the economy or other areas. Include them in the conversations. It's really then going to be a question of reorganizing. And that's going to be around people, it's going to be around sales, it's going to be around performance. But you should have been able to, with your team, identify where the opportunities lie and where the challenges and disruption are coming from. Because as much as I am a glass half full kind of guy, I also realize that, there are always challenges. And then ultimately where most people go wrong is they don't put down a who, what, when. They don't set a KPI, they don't measure it. Most small businesses don't measure enough. Most small businesses avoid lots of measurement. It's not about lots of measurement. It's about what is the key measure for you and who are you measuring it for. But with that action plan in place, you can come back to keep taking your team through performance, particularly in a remote working experience, having regular performance, talking about how everybody's doing, sharing where the business is, is really key. And if the message that's not included on the slides but comes in the summary is about communicate, it's really critical to communicate, and communicate some more, right? But it's your business, so you have to lead it. It's you that sets the vision, it's you that sets the goal, it's you that defines the values. Doesn't mean that you don't do it whereby you include people, but it's your business. Help it work, make it work for you, make it deliver the things that you want. Then please engage your team, reorganize. Bring the 6 R's in. I talked about where R for restart really isn't relevant for some people, but there are still people I recognize that are beginning to restart, and then set an action plan. And from that, you can do a 100-day plan, a 90-day plan, a 180-day plan, whatever length of time scale you want to do. And that will help you navigate into the opportunities that are ahead. So in summary, I guess come back to how you and the team feeling. Hopefully you've got an idea of how to think about the kind of flight path you're taking your business out of emerge, restructure, adapt, and reinvent. That conversation around how long is it going to take for my revenue to come back and how impacted has this been. The framework of the 6 R's allows you to think about the aspirations for your business short and long term, but you need to think about the specific changes of COVID-19 on your market and your business, because everyone is different. You know, there was a time you could talk about general positions, but it's not the same anymore. One, the legislation and regulation is different, and two, how release has happened is specific. Think about your competitors, think about your customers. Is your business fighting fit? And does your competitive advantage still look the same? And then think about your action plan, the lead, engage, etc. And finally, communicate, and communicate some more. And I genuinely believe now is the time to think strategically, but act with immediacy. I can't stress enough, it's time to think about where you want your business to be, because even though we've got lots to do, that direction will change how you actually get there. And with that, I'm going to finish. So if you've got any questions, you can contact me. I offer a free one-to-one. I'm around on all the networking events with HEHBA. Thank you to Claire and to Sue for inviting me. I'm a big believer that you should work on your business, not in it. And I guess I'm going to help you decide whether you want to define the new normal or just observe it. That's it from me today. Thanks, Claire. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Steve. Well, round of applause. Thank you. It's going to be a muted round of applause, but there we go. I have to say, do you know what? It's funny. I didn't know what I needed to know until I just heard that. I can only describe myself as you know that part in the Wallace and Gromit film where Gromit's putting the train track down just as he's about to run over it. That's how I've been for the last 4 months. Planning and strategy has gone totally out the window, and survival, I think, has really kicked in. And I hope I'm not the only one that says that.
You're not, Sue.
Claire. But that's fine. Flying by the seat of my pants,
Sorry.
I think. So I have to say, I just haven't had time to sort of step back and actually consolidate how I should be going forward. So for that, I'm very, very grateful for you to sort of really highlight that. And just anyone else share their experience of you know, how what they've learned from actually just seeing that presentation would be kind of useful. Anyone who wants to chip in, please do unmute yourself. I know what I need to take some time out of my diary to think about it. Rhonda.
I'll chip in. Yeah, I think the issue that this has just made me think about is we're a people consultancy. So for all the reasons that Steve's just talked about, we have been helping our clients and customers deal with all manner of things, from furloughing to now, unfortunately, starting to look at some job loss. And Steve, what you've just made me realise is that in doing all of that, we have thought that we've been thinking about how we deliver things and how we're adapting moving forward. But actually, with the benefit of half an hour's reflection, we've been thinking about how our clients do that and how we might be able to support them, and not what we want to do and how that might fit with society, clients, future, you know, current, and all of that. So for me, there's a lot to go away and just think about, as you say, working on our business, not simply our business and looking out.
Yeah, it's interesting, Rhonda, because I mean, right now people are doing, because frankly, there's so much going on. But if you're restructuring your business and you haven't thought, well, where does I want this to be in 6 or 12 months' time? Then what are you restructuring towards? When I mean, I started lockdown doing loads of cash flows for people, because it was that point of, you know, reiterating, just do another cash flow, I need another cash flow. But actually, your cash flow is a function of your strategy. You know, what you're trying to do, what customers you're trying to get to, when do you think you're going to get them, how do you get to them? And actually, it's not a reactive thing. It's not the reason you exist. The reason you exist is your strategy. It's a function. And actually, it's the same thing. You know, restructuring is really important because things are different. But my challenge is, well, where are you trying to get to? And how does this then help you get there? Understanding the pressure of, you know, being able to afford stuff and everything else that goes with it, because that's natural. But yes, you're right. It's really important to just take a coffee and reflect.
Thanks, Steve. Richard, you've got your hand raised.
Yes, morning, everybody. It's my first visit to your business association, so thanks for the invitation. Yes, at Coaster Capital, we provide business support to all businesses in West Sussex and East Surrey, and I'd absolutely endorse Steve's point there that where we've seen the best success is where companies have repurposed what they're doing and looked at their value proposition and differentiated. And a lot of them have admitted they would never have done it except because they had to. And they've done things in literally, we had one company in 48 hours with an e-commerce site and trebled their online sales. So it's made people, because they've got to a cliff edge, actually think, I've got to change. And as Steve said, you know, the market's changed. Your competitors have adapted or gone down. There are new opportunities. If you develop a strategy which is just based on the same needs of your customers before, you're missing a great opportunity. So that was the strongest point for me.
Thanks, Richard. I mean, look, you know, they say that wars and other things bring great innovation, and I guess we're in a similar place. It's affected everybody. You know, one of my longest standing clients is a funeral director, and we all think they've had a great time. The reality is they haven't, because they've not been taking people to wakes and all that. You know, everything's been doing in 15 minutes. But what has changed is the process that underpin how it all works means that suddenly his business is much more efficient. So he's now thinking of things in ways that, you know, transform what he's going to do. But from the outside, I'd be saying, oh, funeral directors have made a fortune, haven't they? Not really. You know, but again, he's taking time out, how he thinks about it. And I would recommend anybody just grab a coffee, not in the office, right? Go and sit somewhere else and just sit down and do what gives.
Go to Fresh Mills, I think.
Yeah, Fresh Mills is a great place to go. Go and sit Sue for a coffee for half an hour and see.
Coffee machine's back. sorry, Steve. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I don't take this the wrong way. I don't mean this is quite how it sounds, but in a way, I'm grateful for some of the things. Never asked for COVID, would never have wanted it, but it has revitalized my passion for my business, and it's changed my focus, and it's made me think very differently. And I've really enjoyed the challenges that it's thrown. And I've had many challenges, and I'm still going through them. And I've messed up big time in the last. Again, I've made lots of mistakes. I've got to get. I hope I'm not the only one to get back therapy. You know, I'm grateful for the things that this has shown me, and I'm confident that I will kind of be here for another year or two. So anyone else got any questions or anything they'd like to say? Please shout now. No?
I think you said it all, Claire. That's a good point. Yeah, really good. I hope you're around for another couple of years, Claire. It'll be we don't want you going
anywhere, Claire. And you're not the only one who's made mistakes, frankly. Trust us.
No, you're in very good company.
Good. Is that presentation, Steve, is, I think I needed that probably 4 months ago, and I wouldn't have made as many mess ups as I probably had. But you know what? I don't care. You know, it is what it is. I'm happy with it. I've learned. So it doesn't.
How do you learn to ride a bike? You fall off it. It's the same way, right? You know, it's the same conversation that you have, which is you don't know until you do something whether it's going to work. The reality is, some people require different levels of confidence to jump off the edge, and some of the steps help people give them that confidence. There are some people who just will get on, and everybody's different. And that's the beauty of everything we do in business. Everybody's business is different, and the challenges that everybody faces are different. And right now, the biggest thing is that everything's changing all the time. You know, and being agile, you know, flexible, agile, and all those other things, is everything. You know, we weren't wearing face masks yesterday. We're now wearing face masks. Now, maybe a small thing, but we weren't talking about Brexit really. And now we've got check, change, go, right? And as people keep saying to me, we're not ready for that. Well, we're not, but politics tells me it's coming. So, you know,
I think, sorry.
Go on.
I think those people that stay on top of it and realise all the things that you've said, you've got to stay agile, you've got to be change adaptable, pivot, I know is the big word. We'll see this through. And there's opportunity. I think we were talking about this beforehand. There's opportunity everywhere. You've just got to work out how it kind of diverts to you, I suppose. But I'm really, you know, in terms of how the HHBA can help, you know, please keep, if you want to keep visible, keep submitting news to us. If you want to sponsor the newsletter, that's also another possibility. Share the fact that we meet and it's a brilliant association with your friends, your business friends, and tell them to come along as well to the next meeting, which will be networking in August, by the way. The date hasn't been decided yet, but it will be probably next week. So there's lots of things that we can help support businesses as well and make sure that you stay resilient and agile as well. But has anyone got just one last opportunity for anyone to ask a question? I can thoroughly recommend you get connected with Steve on LinkedIn if you're not already. And if you want to contact him and ask him anything further, I'm sure he'd be more than willing to accept questions.
Yeah, anytime.
Brilliant.
Zoe's got a question, I think.
Oh, sorry, Zoe, did you have a question?
Yeah, it was just a quick one. One of the things that I've noticed, certainly with a lot of the people that are in fresh mills, is that the smaller businesses are in a really, really, really good position to be able to kind of take these opportunities and change their businesses really quickly. I think the oil tanker scenario was kind of mentioned. So I think the HHBA, obviously things like this and people talking to each other really enables us to be able to do those things. And because we're not massive, it's not trying to turn the oil tanker around.
When I was referring to the grommet railway lines, that's the HHBA as well. We've had to totally rip up the schedule and rewrite it. In fact, we're still writing it now. We don't even know what's going to be sort of in 6 weeks away, because we just don't know what the environment is at the moment. We don't know exactly what you guys are going to need. So that's not the best. I like to be planned. So this is you know, a different way of us working, but we're having to be very reactive, because it could be in 6 weeks we can actually have a face-to-face meeting. I don't know how optimistic that is. We just cannot tell what's going to happen with the virus, whether it, you know, it could actually disappear. You never know. Yeah, that's an interesting state to be in. But Sue and I we're on the case. So right, that's brilliant. Thank you, Steve. I'm going to
thank you, everybody.
Say goodbye, and thank you very much for all coming along this morning. Hopefully see you at the next one, which look out for the next date. Take care, and